because the news reporter me is curious. And just being human, you're curious. So I drove by Walmart and I saw the police over investigating up around the northwest edge of the parking lot. Excuse me, the southwest edge of the parking lot. And then I saw more police officers and sheriff's deputies up around Erico. So they were checking the scene. But anyway, the suspect is behind bars, and hopefully Mr. Clark will have a full recovery, and that Mr. Sizemore, you better hope that Mr. Clark does not die, because those charges will go up instantly, just like that, okay? So that's the big story here in Kirksville. Now, over the weekend, another argument happened near Hannibal, which ended up with a son dead and a father behind bars near Frankfort, Missouri. 22-year-old Jeff Chisholm of St. John, Missouri, near St. Louis, was pronounced dead shortly before 9 o'clock Saturday night. Chisholm's father, Michael Lee Phillips, age 45, also of St. John, is charged with second-degree murder and armed criminal action. The shooting stemmed from an argument between Chisholm and Phillips. That's according to the Pike County Sheriff's Office. The incident took place on Pike 52, a county road off of Highway 61 between New London and Bowling Green. Now, Pike County Sheriff Stephen Corte said that Chisholm had been fighting with his father and other family members who were traveling as part of a weekend getaway. Phillips remains at the Pike County Jail on $200,000 cash-only bond. So, kind of a violent weekend up here in North Missouri. I think the heat and humidity is getting to everybody, plus the stress of the end of summer is also contributing to that. So, try to keep you updated on those stories as more developments become available. Well, looking nationwide over the weekend, heard about this story on Saturday. Pardon me for just a moment. I need to partake in some coffee. Which reminds me, I'll have the coffee challenge a little bit later on today. If you've been listening to previous episodes of my program, going back to last Wednesday, I said I was going to have a coffee taste test on today's program. I'm going to do that a little bit later on today. Anyway, getting back to the story at hand here. Tim Tebow was cut from the New England Patriots over the weekend. I've never been a fan of Tim Tebow. It's not because of his religious beliefs, although that plays a good part of it. What I don't like about him is that he put himself ahead of any team that he was on. And that's been his MO ever since he got onto the national scene. I have a problem with people who flaunt their faith. Okay? Because I wonder how much of it is genuine and how much of it is for show. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that brags about being a Christian or talks about being a Christian is showing off. But when you're doing it so blatantly, when you're rubbing other people's face in it, look how faithful I am. Well, that to me says I'm a bragging MFer. Okay? And you may not like my language, you may not like my stance, but I prefer a sense of modesty. Now, look who's talking. I'm a guy on here who's paying $20 a month to say whatever I want on a computer and sending it out over the internet. And I admit that I've got an ego. That's part of being a broadcaster. You have to have an ego to be able to do this. It may be a cowardly maneuver at times, but I'd like to call things out when I can. But I don't like Tim Tebow. I don't like Tebowing. I don't like the fact that a lot of Christians are bringing him up as an example of a man who's living his faith. To me, he's hot dogging, and I don't care much for hot doggers. I prefer a sense of modesty and decorum, especially when it comes to helping others. Because, for example, when a company or even an individual brags about how much money they've donated to such and such organization, okay, that's fine. But are you giving out of the goodness of your heart? Or are you giving because, hey, I'm going to get a tax break on this next year, so I'm going to donate a buttload of money now so I can get that money back? Well, that's not giving. That's an investment. That is a frappant investment. And that's what I see Tim Tebow doing. Well, anyway, the signs are looming bigger than Tim Tebow, since he does not seem to have an immediate future in the NFL. Even New England Patriots coach Bill Belichick couldn't use him. And if Belichick, who has always found the best way to utilize players with unique skills, couldn't find a spot for Tebow, who else will? Well, now, Steve Clarkson, the quarterback guru who worked with Tebow this past offseason, has said that Tebow should go to Canada. But does Tebow want to play in Canada? He has always insisted his plan is to be an NFL quarterback, even to the point of resisting a position change, as many have suggested he needs to do. And yet, even if Tebow decides he needs to go to the Canadian Football League, does the CFL want him? I own his rights, and I have never even spoke to the guy. That's according to Montreal coach and general manager Jim Popp told Yahoo Sports 2 days before Tebow's final preseason game with the Patriots. Well, the Alouettes acquired Tebow's rights years ago at the request of head coach Mark Trestman, who had worked with Tebow before the 2010 NFL Draft. At that time, Trestman was in his third year as Montreal's coach, but was allowed by the team to privately train quarterbacks in the offseason, which he spent near Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, before acquiring Tebow's rights, Pop asked the coach if he would change the offense to accommodate Tebow's skills, and Trestman said he would. But that was also with the expectation that Tebow was going to be drafted into the NFL, and the subject was moot. At the same time, the Alouettes had just won a Grey Cup with Anthony Cavillo, the league's most decorated quarterback who remains with the club. Cavillo, now 41, has barely practiced and hasn't played in a game since August 17th, when he suffered a concussion. Montreal is playing a former Arkansas Tech quarterback, Tanner Marsh, and recently signed Troy Smith, another former Heisman Trophy winner, who's had trouble sticking in with the NFL. Adding Tebow might draw attention and sell a few more tickets, but Trestman, having left to coach the Chicago Bears, the Bears, the quarterback mentor, who might have been willing to alter the offense for Tebow, is no longer around. Pop is coaching the Alouettes only because he fired former Colorado coach Dan Hawkins earlier in the season. Now, if Pop hires a new coach next winter, there's no guarantee that man will want to use Tebow or create an offense that uses Tebow's skills. Pop said that he would consider looking at him, since he's a surefire winner. Would he even be the starter? I have no idea, because the CFL uses a 3-down system. There's a premium on going for first downs on 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 situations. Quarterback who can scramble, as Tebow has proven to do, could be effective in Canada. This makes him intriguing, especially on the CFL's wider fields. Bear with me, I'm almost done. Tim Tebow, still pursuing the NFL dream after Patriots, while the bigger, stronger backup quarterback you have, who could run a quarterback sneak, the more advantage you got. That's according to Pop. So he can play the role. There's a lot of kind of college read option, the Vince Young offense, when you're sitting there and here and you can make this guy miss. It's the Colin Kaepernick offense. A lot of that stuff you see in this league. But Pop said many of the same concerns, sees many of the same concerns as other NFL coaches. Can Tebow fix his footwork, prove his accuracy, and hit receivers? This league, because the field is so wide, you still have to throw the ball, and I don't know if Tim Tebow would ever work in this league. He said he would have the opportunity to run the ball into the league, but if you can't make all the throws, you can't play in the league. In the end, this thing has cost Tebow and the NFL might be the thing that keeps him out of Canada. This continues to make him the most confounding professional player in the U.S., a player who led a team to a division title, won a playoff game with an 80-yard touchdown pass in overtime, was maybe the most player in the NFL only a year and a half ago, and now has nothing. Perhaps not even in the league long seen as the refuge for American players trying to make it back to the NFL. So, in other words, Tim Tebow shot himself in the foot, and personally, I think he got what he deserved. Now, I know I'm being very hard on Tim Tebow, and I have to admit part of it deals with the fact that I don't like his arrogance. I don't like his faith. On the surface, I don't have a problem with Christianity. I prefer to leave the supernatural bit out of it. But Tim Tebow, part of it I can see some of myself in him. There were things that I should have done in broadcasting, and I wouldn't do them. I had my own agenda, I had my own ideas, and I was inflexible. Now, had I done what others had wanted, you wouldn't be hearing me right at this moment, and I wouldn't be doing this podcast. So on that side, it worked out. On the other hand, I could be getting paid to do what I'm doing. Finally saying the things that I wanted to say. But, if you really want to achieve a goal, think about the long-term consequences. Don't look at the immediate glory. But that's what I'm trying to get at. There are things that I should have done in my career. I'm not saying I'm ashamed of where I'm at now. I'm very proud of the work that I do. I admit it's not exactly what I set out to do. And things have worked out, and it took a long time to get there. But don't make the same mistakes that I made when I was a young man, in that I'm so arrogant that I become inflexible. Strongly consider your future options is what I'm getting at. Well, enough of my ramblings about this. It's time for a quick check of news headlines on this Monday morning.
Hello, Americans. This is Paul Harvey. Stand by for news.
And take a look at news this morning. Japan vows quick action. Public funds for Fukushima. Japan's NRA chairman Tanaka attends a news conference in Tokyo by Sumio Ito and Marie Sato. Japan vowed quick, decisive action, including the use of public funds to tackle the worsening problem of contaminated water pouring from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant, as authorities stepped in to help fund the facility's embattled operator. The Prime Minister said the government will step forward and implement all necessary policies to deal with the flood of radioactive water from the plant, a legacy of the world's most intense and worst atomic disaster in a quarter century. And for the record, I have seen some of that footage. I think it was on, I want to say, NBC Nightly News. I forgot what night it was last week that I saw it. And it was heart-wrenching. I mean, I could only imagine what it was like after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which was far worse because that attack was not necessary, except the Japanese would not surrender. But what I saw on that footage, you've been in ghost towns, but most ghost towns, over time, things get swept away. But there were still, like, for example, this one camera crew walked into a laundromat, and there was still laundry in the machines. The people were that much of a hurry to get out of there. There's still laundry in there from over 2 years ago that didn't get finished drying or get finished washed. It's done. It wouldn't be usable now by any means, but it's stuff like that, and it was really creepy. Anyway, I was thinking of that as I was reading that story. Well, the Khmer Rouge War Crimes Tribunal staff strike over unpaid wages. Cambodian staff at the Khmer Rouge War Crimes Tribunal went on strike earlier today, an official said, as a funding crisis deepened and a court already bogged down by resignations, political interference, and the frail health of its elderly defendants. Some 250 Cambodians have not been paid since June at the UN-backed court, caught up in a standoff between donors and a government criticized for its lack of support for hearings into one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. And one more story to pass along.